All right, we're going to get into the world of 28 Days Later, and I'm going to start off with my cause of preserving physical media. This one right here was recently in the spotlight just because nobody could watch it anywhere. The Blu-ray had been out of print, wasn't streaming anywhere, so of course with 28 years later coming out, people wanted to watch it. So that is why I will always make the case for physical media, because I didn't have that problem. I could just pop in my Blu-ray player. I think that a lot of us in the horror community, though, that is why I think we appreciate it more than a lot of other movie fans, just because of wanting to find different versions, different artwork. That just seems to be more prevalent in this particular genre. Some of it stems back to those of us, in the old days where maybe we couldn't find the movie we wanted at the big chain video rental store. So, you would go to like a mom and pop place, and then maybe you would just want to own it, because then you wouldn't have that problem anymore. So I think a lot of us in the horror community really do understand the importance of physical media. That, and you're not at the mercy of what streaming apps you have or want to pay for, because there are just so many now that it's ridiculous. And also, you don't know what version of the movie that you're going to get. Are you just going to get the regular theatrical cut? Well, maybe you want the director's cut. Maybe you want the unrated cut, which a lot of streaming services just don't have. So that's my case for physical media. Like I said, especially brought into the spotlight because of 28 Days Later not really being able to be found anywhere. Now you can stream it. I don't know about actually buying a physical copy, although I imagine that when 28 Years Later comes out for release, they'll probably do like a triple pack with all three movies. That's probably what they're waiting for if they haven't already. I don't want to get too heavy into plot with these movies because most people have seen them. If you're watching this, I'm sure you've probably seen it. So I just really kind of wanted to make some general points and share my feelings about it. For me, 28 Days Later is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. It kicked off my crush on Cillian Murphy and a little bit on Naomi Harris, I'm not going to lie. It has a great score. That score is just really effective. Although I don't think, at least from when I was watching it this weekend, I don't think the sound was mixed all that well. At least on the version I had, it was a little rumbly. My soundbar didn't like it very much. That made it for a little bit of a rough experience. Even with the settings, it was pretty rough. And I also wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but why isn't Naomi Harris's character of Selena more often mentioned with like the top like female badass characters? Because that's exactly what she is. I would put her as like a Ripley in Alien type character, if I'm being honest. She is practical, she is efficient, but she is not heartless. She's not uncaring. But sometimes you just have to do what needs to be done, even if you have to kind of distance yourself from it a little bit. That's not the same as just saying, oh, well, screw that guy, I guess. That's not the same thing as just saying, well, just being practical and this just needs to be done. So I always kind of wondered, I don't really ever hear her mentioned. And I just think that's sad because she's such a great character. I mean, she carries a machete and is very efficient with it. I mean, that alone, that would be my weapon of choice in the zombie apocalypse. I mean, I know you have to get kind of close. You'd have to wait for kind of close quarters for that. But you don't have to worry about ammo, and it's effective. But if I had to have a weapon with ammo, I would choose a crossbow. You can always take the arrows out when you're done using them and save them. That's just a little glimpse into my preparedness for the zombie apocalypse. Hey guys, Editing Chris popping in here. Yes, I know technically they're not really zombies, they're infected. It's not really a point I get too tweaked about because it really is a zombie movie, even though, yes, technically the infected are not undead. Like you have your Night of the Living Dead zombies, which are corpses that have been reanimated, whereas here these are just people who are infected with a virus. Yes, I do know the difference, but it's not really worth trying to split hairs over what really is a movie that fits in perfectly with the zombie subgenre. Personally, I like the slower zombies just because there's more dread where, yeah, one isn't very dangerous, but that kind of lets you let your guard down, and then it's the horde that really causes the problem. Whereas fast zombies, you really don't stand a chance. You're just overrun in a second. So I just find the slower zombies just a little more, for the dramatic purposes, I prefer. But that's all. Just popping in to say that. But yes, it is overall, just a very tight survivor's journey, really, of trying to navigate this new world where everything is just gone. There's no infrastructure, there's no leadership, there's no nothing. And what I especially like about how the movie begins is we start with Jim in the hospital waking up after being unconscious for about a month, 28 days later, and he's waking up and obviously noticing that something is very wrong. And I like that we are discovering that along with him. At least the beginning is not very exposition heavy in terms of someone sitting down and holding your hand and explaining it to you. I like seeing all the visual cues and things like that. We do get some spoken exposition from Selena's character when he meets up with her and her traveling companion, which is good too. I mean, yeah, I do appreciate, show don't tell, but I did like their conversations. They were very organic and gave you a lot of extra info, even though you already got the main crux of what's going on. Being able to clear the streets of London to get some of those early shots with Jim's quite impressive. There's just something very haunting about seeing a city of millions just completely quiet. Nobody's out, nothing's going on, and just someone screaming for help just to see if anyone's even, alive out there.
Hello?
I guess you could kind of compare it to some kind of weirdo version of The Wizard of Oz where you're following Jim as he meets these various characters that kind of come along with him on his journey. Not all of them make it, sadly. There's one particularly just absolutely heartbreaking part with Brendan Gleeson's character where he's been caring for his daughter and he knows he's infected and spends that last second telling her to get away, and of course everyone figuring out that he's going to turn. It's so brutal. Sometimes I think even more brutal than some of the kills in that movie. By the end we have Jim, Selena, and Hannah, the young girl that's been left behind by her father after he passes, and they come along this military outpost that they have been looking for. And I know for a lot of people, this is kind of where the movie loses momentum for them. They don't like it as much. For me, it's not necessarily a case of which is the better part of the movie, because I think it all flows extremely well. But for me, it's almost the more harrowing of it, because you have this group of people who think they have found help, and now they're in more danger than they've ever been. With Jim, basically a join us or you're out permanently kind of way. And then with Selena and Hannah facing very physical and other kind of danger from these soldiers. And it bothers me anyway because it is very bothersome, but especially with Hannah because I don't think she's of age. So that just makes it like 1,000 times worse than what they're already going through. And I think, as much as we can distance ourselves from zombies or zombie type creatures, the part at the end is something that you just could see happening anytime under the wrong kind of circumstances. So to me, it's just because it's so realistic is just what makes it so harrowing to me. Like I said, I know it doesn't work for everybody. They kind of tune out by that point. But I think that it's also an interesting part because you see, whereas Selena's always been the one taking charge and Jim's like, well, geez, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And she's saying, well, you got to learn because you're not going to make it very far. And then you kind of see the roles reversed in this part of the film because now you see Jim being more ruthless and doing what he has to do to save these people that he cares about. I really liked that role reversal. There's also a part I liked where there's this split second where maybe Selena is going to do away with Jim because she doesn't know whether or not he's infected. And I really liked that very tense moment of her thing. We know he's not, but of that is he, isn't he kind of thing.
That was longer than a heartbeat.
And of course, for the gore fans, it does have a lot of brutal violence. So it really does tackle the ever popular theme of who is the real monster. Monsters are made in certain situations. And it's a movie I can go back to again and again. 28 weeks later, oof, I want to like it more than I do because it has a lot of good components. I mean, you talk about the casting is amazing. I mean, you have Robert Carlyle, you have Rose Byrne, you have Harold Perrineau, Idris Elba is in it. It's such a solidly cast film. But as far as the story itself, I feel like someone kind of wanted to make like a random action zombie movie, and then they just slapped the 28 weeks later title on it because then they could, make it part of a franchise and then get some of those viewers and just give it a little more credibility. It's kind of the same way I feel about like World War Z, where I think if they just wanted to make a straight up action zombie movie, I mean, that's fine. I did enjoy that movie for the most part, but to base it off of World War Z, which isn't necessarily a narrative, you could make it a movie. It's just not that movie that the film was. Though I do like how effective Robert Carlyle was in this one, where you start off where he just turns tail and abandons his wife. He's just like, nope, you're done. I'm out. I'm one of those people where if it's certain that I am done for in a situation, please don't, risk your life trying to save me if I am unsavable. Like I get that. But at the same time, just to see him, like he didn't even think twice. He just was, I'm out. And I thought that was a very different direction for this movie after seeing Selena and Jim in the first one. So in this movie, the virus has been contained. People are kind of starting to move back into certain areas of London. So when John, played by Robert Carlyle, finds out that his wife did not, in fact, get taken by the zombie horde, he finds her, but now she is a carrier, but he does not know that. So she's able to pass the virus to him, which of course starts the whole thing all over again. Interesting premise. I do like the premise of this one. It just felt very hollow to me. I also felt, we know that we're going to see the gore, and that's great. But I also felt like they took one particular scene in 28 Days Later where Jim put his thumbs to someone's eyes, and that kind of became, in this movie, John's MO, where that's what he did to everybody. So they took one thing that was really effective in the first one and then just beat the crap out of it in this one. And that's just a personal pet peeve of mine because it's not effective anymore. Even if they did it once, okay, fine, it's a throwback to the original, great. But this was it just felt so planned and methodical for that reason, and it just didn't work very well for me. This one also focuses more on the military side of it. This is, I believe they said, U.S. And UN forces were taking over this operation to help everyone come back. So it wasn't the same take as they did with the military in the first one. And again, I don't know if that's because people reacted badly because it was not painted in a good light in the first one, so they felt like they needed to do a redemption. I don't know. But that part was fine. It just felt very generic despite the actors that we have in these roles. Because you have the sniper, you have the helicopter pilot, you have Rose Byrne's character who is a medic, and she's the one who is scanning everybody as they can't come in, make sure they're free of infection. And then when they find this one woman who has survived infection, she wants to study her. But of course, Robert Carlyle's character puts an end to that when he sneaks into her room, and she then passes the infection to him, and we can all guess what happens after that. It just starts all over again. So this one, not as effective. If you want a zombie action movie, then by all means. I just didn't really feel like it had much of a heart, which is what I did like about the original one, despite, it having the horror and the gore and all that. But there is one particular gore scene that I did love with Harold Perrineau's helicopter pilot essentially making zombie chopped salad out of the infected with his helicopter blades. That was pretty damn cool. So this isn't a movie I would tell you to avoid, because I know a lot of people do like this one. Some people even like it better, which obviously is all just a matter of taste. For me, like I said, it just didn't really have much of a heart. I kind of felt myself kind of zoning out because I really just didn't care very much. And that also kind of is because of Robert Carlyle's character, where it started out interesting, and then he kind of became like super zombie. He's surviving everything they throw at him, and he's always able to find his kids that just came back into the city, which I found very convenient. So I don't know. Maybe that's a new infected power. I don't know. It just, I did not, I just, it felt very, it just was too convenient. One thing that we do find out is that the reason some people can be immune from the virus is because they may have a certain mutation in their genes, their chromosomes, which is what John's wife has in this one because she has the two different colored eyes. So they assume that is what, that mutation is what saved her. The problem is she's still a carrier. And in the end, they find out their son with the same mutation with the two colored eyes, he and his sister end up in a safe place in France. But of course, the movie ends with France being overrun by the infected. So I did like that added piece of lore to it. It seemed a very realistic turn. But really, I just wanted to touch on these two movies, share a couple thoughts. What do you think of these movies? Which ones do you like better? And of course, share your support for physical media. And thanks to everybody who has been liking and commenting on my videos. I appreciate every single bit of support I get. I'm still starting out, so I'm hoping to upgrade some equipment pretty soon. Looking forward to putting out some better quality videos. But in the meantime, I appreciate everyone who's been checking out my videos. So please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. It would mean a lot. And as always, like what you like, don't be a dick. And now especially that it is Pride Month, I want to remind everybody to be good to one another. Take one day at a time. Do the best you can.